Hi, I'm Stuart Malina, Music Director of the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra. Welcome to another installment of Conversations with the Maestro, our series of informal conversations with members of our orchestra and other members of the symphony family. So delighted you chose to join us today. Today, being winter, I thought it would be nice to go to the person who lives in the coldest environment, our principal harpist, Rebecca Kauffman, who lives up in Vermont. She's been playing with the orchestra for quite a while and is a wonderful player, and I think you'll enjoy today. So with no further ado, on to Becky.
Well, hello, Becky. It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we had last month Peter Wilson from down in Arizona. Today we have Becky Kauffman Weaver. What do you prefer?
Well, professionally, I'm Rebecca Kauffman. Legally, I'm Rebecca Weaver.
Okay, so I'll just call you Becky. How's that?
That's good.
And we have you up in Vermont. How long have you been living in Vermont?
About 12 years.
Wow, it's amazing.
Can you believe that?
The years have flown by quickly, haven't they?
They have, yes.
And how is life up in Vermont these days?
Vermont is great. We love it up here. And January is supposed to be cold, but we're in the mid-30s. I know that sounds cold for Pennsylvania, but for up here, it's very mild.
And that's the way you like it. You like it cold.
We like it cold and we like it snowy. Yes.
Well, terrific. So, I mean, generally for these videos, we start with your life story. Where did you grow up? How did you come to music? And how did you come to harp in particular?
Okay. I grew up in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. I'm a Pennsylvania girl. And I grew up in a musical family. My father was a professional flutist. He, in fact, was the principal flutist of the Harrisburg Symphony from the mid-1950s to the 1960s.
Wow. I had no idea. That's fabulous.
Yes. So in your annual report that you put out earlier this summer, there's a long picture of the symphony back, I forget what the date is, but my father is in there.
Wow.
Is in that picture.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So, my mother was an amateur pianist. So we grew up in a musical family. I had an older brother and sister who played the piano. And so I started playing the piano at 6. Mm-hmm. And then I changed, also started playing the cello in 5th grade. So I was cellist all through high school. In fact, into college, I played cello in the orchestra in college when there was no harp part. So
when did you start playing the harp?
I was 16, so I was older. And my sister is a harpist as well.
I know her
and
well.
My older sister, yes. And she used to tell me, don't touch my harp. I have to go out now, but I don't want you to be touching my harp. So, of course. That was just too tempting. So I would go and play her harp, and being a musician, I figured out what all the strings were. I knew what the pedals did. And I was just, making up tunes or playing tunes that I by ear. And it was my mother who recognized that I really liked this instrument. And I just thought, this is my sister's instrument. I have no business playing this instrument. This is her instrument. She, it's hers alone. And so for my 16th birthday, they sent me to Camden, Maine to study at the Salcedo Harp Colony with Alice Shalafu. Mm-hmm. And I had a great start.
So, I know Jane, she's played with you. I mean, a lot of orchestral repertoire has 2 harps, and generally our default is having you and Jane playing together. And I know the 2 of you get along great musically, but when you were younger, when you started playing harp, was there sibling rivalry at that point? I mean, were there jealousies or was she angry at you for taking up her instrument?
No. So that's the beauty of my family. We are so supportive of one another. She's had her glorious moments behind the harp, being soloist with the Reading Symphony, and I'm there as the biggest cheerleader. And the same thing in reverse. It's just, and I think it was the upbringing. I think my parents kept things very, very balanced. And that kind of behavior just wasn't acceptable. So we're very, very compatible. We're best friends.
That's fantastic. So what was the transition from piano to harp a natural one? Is it basically the same in terms of how you use your hands?
Yes and no. The reading is the same. So you have your 2 staves, your treble and your bass staff. So it looks the same. As far as scales, you know how in piano, the left hand starts with the pinky and the right hand starts with the thumb. We're very much the same. Start with the fourth finger.
Wow.
You know,
Well, that would be an
that
adjustment.
was a little different. So
Okay, we'll get back to the harp in a moment. I've jumped ship, but let's get back to your story. So you grew up in Lidditz. You were playing harp at 16 and cello from a young age, and piano. So did you go to conservatory to study music, or did you study music while you were at a regular university?
I went to Millersville University and majored in music education.
Oh, wow.
So I was, right. So, but I had this performance drive. So, you know, I did all the recitals that I was eligible to do when I was in undergraduate school. And when I graduated, I got a job in Harrisburg teaching elementary strings.
At which school?
Central Dauphin.
Oh, wow. How about that? That's our district.
I know. I had 13 buildings.
Wow. That's amazing.
I know.
So really, you kind of had it all. You're the first of our interviews who really has made a career both as an educator and as a professional performer. Is it hard to balance those things together? I mean, I know that teaching in a large school district can be an all-encompassing kind of job.
Right. I find the balance to be a really good thing. I think that I'm a better teacher because I'm a good performer. And I think I'm a good performer because I'm a teacher. I think it really works hand in hand. So I don't regret my years in public school. I was 29 years teaching in public schools. And I don't regret it at all. I just think it was an amazing job. And when I retired, I was really happy to have these experiences where all I had to do was perform and practice. That was a nice change.
Sure. I mean, I think it's kind of the perfect situation where the two things you're passionate about, you got to realize both of them.
Right.
While you were teaching, when did you start playing in the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra?
Oh, I started back in 1979.
Okay.
So
great.
I graduated from college in 1979, and my first professional gig was with Harrisburg, and it was playing with my sister, Debussy, Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun.
Nice.
I played second harp. So, and then she and her husband decided that 3 symphonies were too much because they were also teaching full time. So they both quit Harrisburg, and I just stepped in. So
they were playing in Reading and in Lancaster as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, that's kind of perfect, isn't it?
It was. And so when I hear the stories of my colleagues and the audition process, and I got in a really strange moment where I never auditioned. So
yeah. Who was the conductor of the orchestra at that time? I'm sorry, who was the conductor of the orchestra at that time?
It was Larry Newland.
Oh, great. So it must have been fairly early on in his tenure.
It was. I think it was about a year into it.
And I think he, more than anyone else, from what I understand, is responsible for the dramatic transformation of the orchestra into the professional, incredibly high quality group it is now.
I think that's correct. I think that's an accurate statement, because I'm very grateful to him for the opportunities I had in performing. And it started off as a paid community orchestra, in my opinion. And by the time he left, we were full professional orchestra. So, and I think he was there for 15 years.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's wonderful. And we'll talk about the Harrisburg Symphony in a moment. Let's actually go to your the first recorded video that you have. Do you want to introduce it and talk a little bit about why you chose it?
Yeah. This is Song of the Night, written in the 1920s. And it's a piece that shows off the sound effects of the harp, what the harp is capable of producing. It's a lot of sounds that you will not hear in an orchestra. Most of the time in the orchestra, what you will hear us playing in the middle of the strings where it's very resonant and beautiful. You will hear harmonics where you touch the string halfway in between the top and the bottom, and then pluck the string that sounds an octave higher, and it sounds sort of like a bell sound. So in orchestra, we use that, and of course the glissandi. where you just take your finger and run it over the strings. Whereas in this piece, Salzedo developed all these different sound effects. So sometimes I'll be playing close to the sounding board. Sometimes I'll be using my nails close to the sounding board. It's very brassy, very harsh sound. You'll hear glissandos with my fingernails. So he calls it the falling hail effect. So the very
That's a good term.
Yeah, great. So the last two lines of the piece, I'm using my fingernails and coming down the harp. It's really a very effective sound. And there's one sound where I take my hand, the flat part of my hand on the bass strings and go up like this, and it's a whoosh sound.
Cool.
So yeah, so there's such cool sounds in this piece. Plus, Salzedo was very, very aesthetic. He didn't like the way the harp looked when it was played. And in fact, the Russian dancer Nijinsky said to him, Carlos, the harp is such a beautiful instrument, but it looks so ugly when it's played. Why can't you do something about that? And that really bothered him. So he developed this technique of playing the harp where the harpist, everything, the sound has to match the motion. Mm-hmm. So when I put my hands to the harp, if it is starting slow and soft, it's this whole preparation, just like a conductor.
Sure.
How you express the music with your hands. So, and the elbows have to be up. We don't put them on the board. And the harp is very steady. You never see my column rocking back and forth when I'm playing. It is very stable. The only thing that's moving is the hands.
So do most harpists now play with this technique? Is this kind of the uniform accepted, this is how you play the harp?
No, I will say there's two schools of playing. It's the Salzedo method and what we call the French method, for lack of another term. And in both harpists, the harpists that play with either of those techniques or those methods play beautifully. It's I can't say enough about my colleagues who don't play the Salzedo method, how beautifully they play. Uh-huh. But I don't like watching them.
It's interesting because when I think of the harp, I do think of that beautiful, graceful, right, dance-like motion.
Right, and dance is the perfect word. I mean, we are dancing with our hands. It's all choreographed. And I think that's why I love playing the Nutcracker so much, is because I can appreciate what these dancers are doing. And it's just because I'm dancing with my hands.
Yeah, I totally get it. I understand it. I have the same feelings when I'm conducting ballet, that it just kind of fits into that world of dance, and that's right. It's a beautiful feeling. So let's hear this piece, and then we'll talk a little bit about it when we return. Wow, I mean, I've heard you play that piece live. I love the piece. It's absolutely beautiful. It's so interesting. And everything you talked about with the way your hands move rings true in the way that that piece comes across. But you had told me a quote that that you shared with me at one point. Would you like to share that now?
I would. It's a beautiful quote from Nijinsky when he said, Salzato's hands explain the music before the music starts.
It's really great. And in fact, it's so applicable to conducting as well.
Oh my
that's
God.
Everything we learn is the beat before the music is what sets up the music that happens. So
Exactly.
but what's interesting to me, and something you didn't mention at all before, is that with all of this choreography of your upper body, there's, if anything, much more choreography going on with your feet at the same time.
Correct.
So maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about how the harp actually works and what are all those pedals doing? Why are they there? And what do they do to the instrument?
Right. So the pedals came about, it's called the double action pedal harp, in about 1810. So this is why there's not a lot of orchestral music before that time. So, and what the pedals do is they give me my sharps and my flats. So the strings are diatonic, like the white keys of the piano. So you have, like, you were in C major all the time. So with the pedals, I have 7 pedals, one for A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And when there's an accidental, or if I'm in the key of G major.
Yeah, so an accidental is a sharp or a flat.
A sharp or a flat. So if I'm in the key of C major, we're playing the piece that's in C major. All the pedals are in the middle position.
Okay.
And if all of a sudden we modulate to G major, then I need to have an F sharp. So I just take the F pedal and push it into the F sharp position, and now I am in the key of G.
So
and
every F string becomes an F sharp.
Every F string becomes an F sharp. So this is why when, for instance, I can play in terrible keys. I can play in 7 flats and not even blink an eye. I can play in 7 sharps and not blink an eye. It doesn't mean anything as far as the difficulty. Like if for other instruments, that would be really hard. So if there's an orchestra piece that's in the key of B major, a lot of times the composer will put my part into C flat major, because when the harp is in the flat position, when all the pedals are in the upper position, they're in the flat position, the harp is the most resonant. So as soon as you start pushing the pedals, there's a disc at the top of the harp, the neck, that turns a half step. The string will go up a half step. And when you're in the sharp, all in sharps, so you're crimping the string twice. It's just not, it doesn't quite have that real centered, really glorious sound. And it's beautiful.
No, that makes total sense. That's interesting.
Yeah, so,
And so the other thing that's possible with this is making chords.
That's right.
Because you can make an A sharp and a B flat be the same note, and then the next one could be a minor third apart.
That's correct.
That's when you get those beautiful, like Debussy Afternoon of a Faun effects.
Right. Well, and the whole tone scales, just.
Yeah. Do you enjoy that? I mean, for me, I imagine that if I were a harpist and I was playing like a John Williams score, those big sweeping glissandos where the harpist goes would be like the most fun thing to do.
Well, it's fun. It's also, if there's a lot of them, you rip the skin of your fingers because it can get very painful. So if I'm doing a pops concert, maybe the audience they'll love this little tip. I have a thick felt pick that I use.
I had no idea.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard of harpists using like guitar picks when they want it to be really pingy, but that's very cool, very smart.
Saves your
self-preservation. So when you're working out a piece, I send you a brand new piece of music. You have to do your own choreography of how you're going to move the pedals, right? This is not something that most composers provide for you, is it?
I think the modern composers are starting to put pedal diagrams, and by a diagram, I mean, there'll be a straight line and a vertical and a horizontal line, and the left pedals are over here, the right pedals are over here, and some of them are in flat, some of them are in sharp, and if they're on the horizontal line, then it's natural. So they'll put a diagram in, that's a diagram, and they'll put the pedal changes like E flat, or, if all of a sudden I need an E flat. I find that really annoying. So I cross them all out and I put my own pedals in.
Yeah.
So, but I think in music school, they are really encouraged to know how to pedal for the harp. And I get that, the composers are learning about the instruments, and it's really good that they know that the harpist has to do this, because if they give me something too chromatic and there's too many pedal changes all at once, it makes it really almost impossible to play. So if they see all these pedal changes, they know, whoa, I have to.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I actually just bought my son, who's a composer, as you know, a book by Yolanda Condenasis, which is Harp for Composers. Like, what do you do when you're creating harp music for a harpist? And I thought that was a good idea. There was nothing really like it out there, and it's something most composers even don't know much about.
Right. So, and other different harpists we'll get rental music, and the pedals are still in there. So sometimes they're really good, and sometimes it's just wrong. So, we're changing them all the time.
And to what extent at this point, I mean, you've been playing harp for decades, needless to say. Is it now kind of automatic? You see A, go to sharp, and you just automatically go there? Or is there still a thought process that needs constant rehearsal so that it becomes automatic?
Well, that's a really
Does that make sense?
It does, because if they're written correctly, the brain will pick up on that right away, and you'll know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
If it's a really complex pedal passage, it'll take practice, because there has to be muscle memory. Right, there has to be muscle memory, and eventually you get to the point where you're playing and the feet, you don't even remember moving the foot out to the A pedal or back to the E pedal. It's just automatic. They just start moving. It's
kind of like a trombonist with the positions, or, I see an F sharp in the music and I just play an F sharp rather than thinking, I have to raise it up a half step and play the black key.
Right. So yeah, it's really a miracle when that happens. It's like,
and do you enjoy that process of kind of, it's almost like every piece is its own puzzle. Do you enjoy that part of the process, or is it drudge work that you have to do in order to get to the fun of playing it?
And I always think that practicing is part of the fun part of playing an instrument, because it's where you really get to be creative. You're by yourself. You can just play around with how you think the phrase goes, mm-hmm. and what to do. And then you get to orchestra and you have to change because of what's going on around you. So it's really exciting.
And so let's talk now about the difference between playing solo and playing in an orchestra. Other than the more limited repertoire of technique that you use, do you find it a very different experience? And is there one that you enjoy more than the other, or is it just two aspects?
Well, they're very different. And we've talked about playing solos before. It's very, very hard.
Yeah.
It's very nerve-wracking and very rewarding, I have to say. It's, there's some beautiful solo harp pieces out there that it's so much fun, but you are just there by yourself. And I prefer playing with other people, either in small chamber groups or, and my very favorite is playing in an orchestra. So, I've been there 41 years, and I still pinch myself. Like, is this real? Am I still really doing this? This is great.
It's a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Harrisburg specifically. I mean, you joined Harrisburg in '79, correct?
Correct.
And we've talked a little bit about the changes that have happened in the orchestra, but how would you characterize what makes our orchestra unique or different from most other orchestras?
Right. Well, the growth has been amazing. So, I have to say, of all the projects I've been involved with, I'm so proud of being involved in this journey with Harrisburg Symphony for 40 years. So that being said, I think what sets us apart is the respect and the affection everybody has for one another, not just the musicians, but with the conductor, with management, with the board. Everybody works together to make Harrisburg Symphony a real beautiful organization in central Pennsylvania. It's really, I think it's respect. I really do.
Well, I do think that there is a culture of mutual respect, and it works in both directions because,
Exactly.
It's not just that management, treats the orchestra with respect, but the orchestra treats everyone else with respect and each other, which is kind of a beautiful
It really
thing in
is.
a world that can be driven by ego.
Yeah. So,
But well, that's really good to hear. And are there memories of yours playing in the orchestra that stand out as kind of like the highlights of this this tenure that you've had with us?
well, anything French, Debussy Ravel, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. But I have to say, Mahler Second, every time I perform Mahler Second, well, I'm in tears by the fifth movement with that chorus. Oh my gosh.
It's a transformational piece every time.
I never get tired of it. And then there was a Pops concert that just, we were all so undone by this Pops concert. I mean, you were so great with Pops. And
which one was that?
It was the movie. So it was, I think there was To Kill a Mockingbird, Elmer Bernstein's
Yep.
score. Oh my gosh, such beautiful music.
Heroes and Villains, I believe, wasn't it?
I'm not sure, but it was Godfather.
Oh, yeah.
And you playing the accordion. And this is such a testament to you and just how you kind of roll with the punches. It was the second concert, and Pasquale and Tom are wonderful stagehands. We're out there. They bring out the accordion. They open the box. They're standing there like the mafioso with their hats and stuff. And you start playing the theme from The Godfather, and one of the string players gets up and starts throwing money in the case.
I remember it well.
Your shoulders are going up and down. We are just in the back of the orchestra. We could hardly keep it together. It was just, and you know what? Other conductors would just be so incensed because the musicians pulled a fast one. No, not Stuart. Stuart's all over it. It was great.
I live for things like that.
That was so perfect. Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you for bringing that up again. It brings a smile to my face every time I think about it. And kudos. I don't remember if it was Odin or one of the other first violins, but whoever it was, bravo for thinking of it. A spectacular moment.
Well, they obviously were in cahoots and backstage, but we didn't know. Mm-hmm. And so, oh my gosh.
Well, I've always felt if you can keep the orchestra not knowing what to expect, then you've won already, because they'll be focused, they'll be paying attention and having a good time. And you know, if we're having fun on stage, the audience is going to have fun.
Exactly.
It's unavoidable. Well, let's go to your second video, apropos of the wonderful people who play in the Harrisburg Symphony. Do you want to introduce that?
Sure. This is by Claude Debussy, and this is with my flute player partner, and best friend from the orchestra, Mary Hannigan, who just retired. And so, yeah, I just wanted to honor her. And it's also a beautiful video of us playing the Debussy Minuet from the Petite Suite.
Well, I'm delighted. Can't wait to hear it. Well, that piece, the Petite Suite, is a piece that I've been playing for many years. It's a four-hands piece of music. I now play it with my son. I used to play it with my father. Absolutely charming music, and it was wonderful to see you playing with Mary. I know that the two of you played together for many years as a duo.
Right.
Mary's played in the orchestra for so many wonderful years, and great to honor her. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's always my pleasure because, we steal all the good piano music on the harp. You know this, right?
Yes, well, and Debussy lends itself so beautifully to the harp.
Right.
So what I'm wondering is, obviously we're heading, hopefully at least, towards the end of this pandemic. Do you have plans for when the whole thing is over? Are there things you haven't been able to do that you'll finally be able to do again that you're looking forward to?
Well, and the number one thing is being able to play with the symphony. So
Yeah, well,
that'll be great. Yeah, and I've been keeping myself busy. Over the summer, I played a couple outdoor concerts where you felt it was safe because it was outside. One was at a place called Dog Mountain. Now, only in Vermont is there a place called Dog Mountain, where it is a dog sanctuary where you can bring your dog off leash and they can run around on the acres and acres of land.
wow.
And yeah, it's pretty amazing. And so I played with two flute players, and it was really, really fun. We had a great time.
Sounds terrific.
So of course I could play with a mask. Flute players don't have that luxury. So, but it was a beautiful performance. It was great. And I started some deck concerts.
Yeah,
here
you told me about this. Actually, talk about the deck concerts, because it
So
was such a unique and wonderful idea.
well, not so unique. I was sort of modeling it after Italy with the singers on the balcony. You read reports about that. And I thought, my neighbors, I live in a condo association. There's 40 units. We all have decks. And a lot of people are alone. They're elderly. And so I thought, okay, I'll just play for a cocktail hour, like I'm doing a wedding and I'm playing for the cocktail hour. I've got all this music. And they can come and bring their wine or their cocktail and just socialize at a safe distance and be able to see their neighbors. So they all showed up with their lawn chairs and their glass of wine and sat and listened like it was a concert. I thought, okay, I'm in trouble now. So
now I have to practice.
I know. So I've done 4 deck concerts, and then there's other musicians that live here, and they started doing deck concerts. So our community changed. As a result, we are now much closer. We're doing Zoom meetings with each other during the winter times because we can't get together. And it was really interesting. So this fall, I thought, okay, I can't play for them on the deck, but I'm going to do the 12 days of Christmas. I'm going to play 12 Christmas carols. And my husband did the history of the carols and some fun facts about the carols, and we didn't identify them. So we made it into a game. Like, do you know what this carol is? And here's some information. And so at the end, they sent me their lists, and then I gave them a complimentary CD. And so, and they couldn't wait to get to their computers to listen to the next carol. So
that's marvelous. I love these stories because they truly are bright silver linings in this very dark time.
I agree because I think people are really concerned about one another in a way that we haven't been for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a healthy thing. So if anything's good has come out of this pandemic, it's our sense of community, at least up here, has grown and become stronger.
Well, it's really great to hear. So I'll lead you then into kind of a closing thought. Like, what do you see as the future of classical music, the future of performance music? We're going to be facing great obstacles coming out of the pandemic. Many of them are economic, but I think there's also a question of, will there be the same interest for coming to see live music? What are your thoughts on that? And what do you see as the future of our art form?
I think they will. And I think because what we do in Harrisburg Symphony is we produce good art. And the classical music that you program, people love to hear again. And so, because it's good, it's not because it's bad music, and I don't think we would know what bad music was if we didn't have good music. So, something
There's
to compare.
Plenty of it out there, I can promise you.
Yeah, there is. But, and it's not just the classics. I mean, it could be rock and roll. There's good rock and roll and there's not so good rock and roll. Mm-hmm. So, if it's good art, they will come back for it. We go to museums and see artwork all the time that's 400 years old because it's good. So it's brilliant. It's masterful. So, and I think that's what classical music, most classical music is.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm certainly hopeful that that's the case.
Yes.
But I will say I'm incredibly much looking forward to being back on stage at the Forum with the full orchestra, having you back in Harrisburg. You are a wonderful person, but you are also an incredibly beautiful harpist.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for all these years of wonderful playing, and hopefully we'll have many more to come. But thanks for joining us today. I hope the rest of this pandemic time is as productive as it's been so far. And
right. Well, I'm going to find new projects.
And in the meantime, Happy New Year and wonderful, wonderful to see you.
It's wonderful to see you too.
Take care, Becky.
You too.
Thanks so much to Becky for that wonderful interview. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about her life's journey and about the harp. These are perilous times and things are constantly shifting. So I encourage you to go to our website, harrisburgsymphony.org, for all the up-to-date information about broadcasts, about concerts that we'll be performing, and other information related to the symphony. I also encourage you to check out our YouTube page, where we have every episode of Conversations with the Maestro archived. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful winter, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again.